Now, Robin, in talking about what you describe as a retirement roadmap, you're speaking about the policy changes in the context of Australia's ageing demographic. What are the key points that you're covering there?
Well, I think obviously the superannuation system is a great system on any sort of global measure. Could it be better? Yes, but the accumulation part of the system, we would argue, is very well thought through. It's mature. People understand the 9.5% default, etc. When it gets into the transition to retirement, to the spending, the decumulation part, we think there's still plenty of work to be done there on a policy level to, like, what are the right spending levels for people to adapt? Are there retirement income products that we need to develop to actually help people look out, not just 5, 10 years, but 20, 30 years, because as we all know, demographics is destiny, and the demographics is that we have an ageing population. People are living longer, which is great news, but when you're retiring at 65, 66, you've probably still got 30 years, and that's a big risk for people. How do you actually manage a portfolio for 30 years to make sure you don't run out of money at the end?
So what you're saying basically is the system has been set up for the accumulation, and people have been educated about that whole saving for retirement, but that drawdown piece is still in its relative infancy, I guess.
Well, I think it's a work in progress. I think the David Murray Financial System Inquiry recommended SIPPs, comprehensive income products for retirement. The industry's grappling with that. The policymakers are grappling with what's the construct of that? Is it simply the allocated pension with some other stuff in it? So I think there's a fair bit of policy and regulatory settings, which from a retiree point of view brings with a level of risk. Because as regulatory settings change, retirees, they don't have the ability to adapt or save more or to defer retirement if they're already in that retirement phase. So I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that changing rules when people have actually been saving for retirement through their working life, and then changing the rules when they're in retirement, can have pretty significant effects.
Mm-hmm. And just following on from that, so in the presentation today, you had some quite interesting groupings that you've put together of the specific investment goals for people that are in retirement, and also some of the risks. You had, I think, 4 or 5 risks there. And you speak here about the policy and taxation risk. And is that what you see as one of the primary risks over the shorter term?
Over the short term, I think absolutely. Obviously, there's proposals in the market around, for example, abolishing franking credits. Well, for self-managed superannuation funds, that would be, that would have a significant effect. And these are people, remember, who have been structuring their affairs, running their self-managed super fund based on the current rules. So, changing those rules, we think will have a pretty significant impact on portfolios, because they're relying on those franking credits to give them a certain level of income. In terms of other risks, obviously there's always market risk for defined contribution for market-linked investments. The market risk's not going to go away. From a Vanguard perspective, we think returns expectations should be lower than what they've been historically, so more in the sort of 6 to 8 range rather than 10s and double figures, etc. And then you have the other risks in retirement of a health event. Something significant happens on that level. These are things that come along which are unexpected and can come with expensive health bills, etc. So people need to have in our mind a holistic sort of roadmap around it, so that they can actually have some level of financial security and comfort about their retirement plan.
You're talking about it's an objectives-based process towards planning for their retirement. What were some of the ways that people can match their withdrawal strategy with their objectives in retirement?
I think one of the interesting points around this is people sort of anchor around, well, how much do I need to retire? So it tends to be a goal of, what's the magic number? Is it $500,000? Is it $2 million? Whatever that number might be. To us, it's more about there's a multiple goals. It's actually about saving a certain amount of money, but it's actually about understanding your risks and balancing that. So having that sort of strategy around it. And to your point, the key, we often have a good saving strategy. People are saving 9.5% or perhaps more into super, plus outside super investments. So they've got a portfolio view. What's their spending strategy? When they actually get into retirement, what's the rate? Are they going to draw it down at 5% a year plus inflation? Are they going to draw 5% of whatever the portfolio is that year? I mean, these are some of the sort of norms around the marketplace. We're advocating more of a dynamic spending rule where people can set a ceiling and a minimum. There's some volatility in the spending level, but at least it gives you a good probability that over 30 years, say, you're still going to have money in the bank.
Sure. Great. Thank you very much for your time today, Robert.
My pleasure, Glenn.
Any advice in this video is general advice prepared by Morningstar without reference to your financial objectives, situation or needs. You should consider the advice in light of these matters and any relevant product disclosure statement before making any decision to invest.